Welcome back to Mohawk Motors, everybody. My name is Jason, and this is the first video I'm recording in 2026. So, Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you had a nice holiday season and a good start to the year. And hopefully you're getting after it on your projects. It's high time that I take care of some things on some of my projects that I have been procrastinating. And the first thing I want to do this year is use some parts that I've had sitting on the shelf since we moved up here to where we live now in Pennsylvania. And that is a rear disc brake conversion on my 2007 Classic single cab short bed. If you've been around for a while, you may recognize this truck. I bought this truck years ago. It was originally a V6 truck. I converted it to V8. I swapped in an aluminum block L33 5.3. Still factory 4L60. Really the only other modification I've made to this truck is a few little interior upgrades, some nicer add-ons, turn signal mirrors, things like that. And I did swap the rear axle. I swapped in a 10 bolt out of another parts truck that I had, but this one has 410 gears and a Yukon Duragrip posi in it. I did that really because I wanted to see how much difference it makes in one of these trucks going from like a 323 rear axle ratio to a 410 rear axle ratio. And I'll tell you, it made a huge difference. And the truck stopped really well, but I really liked having front and rear disc brakes on the 2005 Silverado that I converted a while ago, the silver one. Maybe you remember that one. And I've honestly had these parts to do this conversion sitting on the shelf since before I even put that truck together. And for whatever reason, I've been putting it off. And one of my goals for 2026 is to use a lot of the parts that I have sitting around. I've got so much stuff around here with plans and ambitions that I just haven't followed through on. It's time to be a little bit better about following through. So we're getting this disc brake conversion done. I've gone ahead and done one side already because I've had these parts sitting around for a long time, and I kind of needed to puzzle it all back together and remember how the parking brake and service brake system works on these things. I've got the passenger side put together. I'm just waiting on the parking brake cable to get here, and then that side will be wrapped up. But I'm going to show you the whole process on the driver's side. And just to help you really know exactly what we're working with here. So I'm using, these are actually all Suburban parts that I'm swapping onto this rear axle. The Suburban 1500, the Tahoe, the Silverado 1500, Yukon XL 1500, the Escalade EXT, they all use the same 10-bolt rear axle. And they all have the same brake mounting provisions welded to the axle tube. The differences in them are how the suspension is mounted and whether or not they have wheel speed sensors for both rear wheels or not, or none for the rear wheels. In our case, we're not worried about the axle itself as much as just getting the brake parts put on. And I am using brake parts from a Suburban. The reason being, the extended wheelbase SUVs, Suburban, Yukon XL, and Escalade EXT came with a dual piston rear caliper. The 1500 series pickups, the Tahoes, the short Yukons, and the short Escalades had a single piston rear caliper. So it's just going to give us a little bit more clamping force back here. And if I'm buying all the parts anyway, why not just get the best part I can, right? So I ordered a loaded caliper for a 2006 Suburban. It's a drilled and slotted brake rotor for a 2006 Suburban. a brake backing plate, or dust shield, if you will, for a 2006 Suburban, new brake hose for a 2006 Suburban, and I actually used even the caliper mounting brackets for a 2006 Suburban. Now, a lot of these parts are the same for both sides. The mounting bracket, both sides are the same part. Rotors, if you're just getting stock rotors, same for both sides. If you're getting drilled and slotted, obviously different for both sides, for each side, because they are directional. The dust shield, backing plate, same part for both sides. Parking brake hardware and parking brake shoes, same thing on both sides. And usually the shoes you buy as a pair, the hardware kit, you just buy the whole kit. So you won't have to worry too much about that stuff. The brake calipers, there's a left side and a right side. The brake hoses, there's a left side and a right side. And I'll put the part numbers for everything I'm using in the description for you guys so it's easy to find. If you haven't done this before, probably the least convenient part of this whole thing is you have to pull the axle shafts out. In order to change out the bracket and get the drum assembly off, you got to take the axle shaft out so you can remove these 4 bolts and then slide this off the end of the axle. And as I said, I've done the passenger side so I can puzzle it all out, make sure I get it right. We'll do the driver's side next. And like I said, I've already got the axle shaft out. I'm going to remove these 4 bolts. We'll be able to slip the whole part, the drum brake assembly off. And then we'll get it cleaned up and get ready to start putting our new disc brake parts on. You know what? I guess I should explain to you how to get the axle shaft out if you haven't done this before, right? So these are C-clip style axles. You'll see on the end of the axle here, we've got a little groove, and there's a C-clip that slips over that, and that's what holds the axle into the differential. Here's my driver's side C-clip. Now, this is an aftermarket diff, but they're all generally the same. There'll be a center pin that goes through the middle. It's held in with a little bolt that goes in from the side. I can turn this around here and show you. The center pin goes through here. The bolt comes in from here to hold the center pin in place. So you remove the bolt, you pull the center pin out. That'll give you access. And you'll see my other side is blocked. Most differentials, except for opens, you'll only be able to access from one side. There we go. So then I have access. I can get in here. You push the axle shaft toward the center of the vehicle. That slips it in, and then you'll be able to remove the C-clip. I'll be able to show you as I put this side back together and give you a little bit better idea of how it actually works, but it's not terribly difficult. You just got to take the cover off, drain the oil, blah, 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 blah. So now let's get the drum off on that side and get it prepped to start going back together. All right, so since we're not going to be reusing any of these drum brake parts, I already went ahead and undid the parking brake cables because we need to replace those as well. The disc brake parking brake cables are different from the drum brake parking brake cables. So there's our drum brake cable, our park brake cable undone. We've got 4 bolts. They take an 18mm socket or wrench that hold our drum brake backing plate on. We get those off, and then the backing plate is probably stuck. Yep. We grab our mallet. Give it a few love taps. If it doesn't cooperate, we stick a bolt back in it. Oh, no. I did the same thing on the other side. First, we undo the brake line, the hydraulic line, the brake line. What the? That's the wrong wrench. Dang it. Dang it, Bobby. There we go. We get our hard line undone off the back of the drum here. This isn't what was holding it, but I don't want to wreck this nice, not rusty brake line. There we go, she's loose. Now we knock the pants out of it with our mallet because it's seized on there from being together for, you know, about 20 years. And then we put a little rubber cap over the end of the line there so we don't make a huge brake fluid mess all over the place. And now is the time, while we have this apart, as you saw, I had to hammer the drum brake backing plate off of here because our flange is a little rusty and crusty. So we get that cleaned up. I'm going to hit it with the needle scaler and then the wire wheel, and then we can start bolting on our new caliper bracket and backing plate dust shield to hold on our new stuff. We can also undo these little plastic brake line holder things, and we can undo our hard line. All right, we've got this thing all cleaned up to where I'm happy with it now. And we can get our brake backing plate, dust shield, caliper mounting bracket. Oh, don't need those in there right now. Holy moly. And I think I had already mentioned, but this bracket, caliper mounting bracket slash parking brake bracket, and the backing plate, they're the same. Both sides are the same thing. And the way this goes together, our bracket is going to go first. And then we take our little caliper mounting bracket, and you see it has on here FRT with an arrow. That side goes toward the front. So we finagle this thing in. Oh, I almost did it and I have the piece in my hand. When you do this, if you want to replace your little rubber boot that goes over the parking brake arm, now is absolutely the time to do that. Seals it up from the elements. There we go. Now we've got that. Now we put it right up here, like so. And then one difference here, this bracket obviously is much thicker than the backing plate for the drum brakes. So you need a little bit longer bolts. I'm using some 10.9 bolts that I had. They're from somewhere on one of these trucks. I think these are one of the front bumper bolts, but they're grade 10.9. They had a locked washer, or they had an attached washer. I cut the washers off, so I just have the flanged head. More than strong enough for what we're doing here. Same grade as the bolt that came off. I give it a little dab of anti-seize. Ba-boom. Get them threaded in there. Now, I do believe, if I recall correctly, on a Suburban, this 4-bolt pattern is rotated a bit. But honestly, for what we're doing, it's not going to make that much of a difference. As long as we can still get the bleeder of our caliper to be the highest point on the caliper, which we'll be able to do, everything will be just fine. Calipers don't care what position they're in on the wheel. The thing that matters is you have to have the bleeder at the top of the caliper so you can get all the air out of it. And we'll be able to do that just fine. And I'll try to show you here, just in case anybody's worried. Here's the bolt that came out, 10.9. Maybe that's focused. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see that. And here's what we're putting in. Also 10.9. Same size, just a little bit longer. So we get those started in there. And then I torque these down to 110 pound-feet. 2. I will say, if you get the brackets from a pickup, they're clocked to match the bolt pattern on a pickup. But like I said, for our purposes, this isn't going to hurt anything. We'll still be able to hook up our parking brake cables. There we go. We'll still be able to bleed our caliper. We'll still be able to get everything how it's supposed to be. Ta-da! So, next thing to do, at least what I think makes sense to do, is get our parking brake mechanism put back in here. For our parking brake mechanism, we've got the arm, and this needs to go so that this opening is pointed toward the front of the truck, away from the little bracket where the parking brake cable mounts up. We've got 1 foot, I'm not sure what to call it, and our adjuster. And I'm going to put some anti-seize in here. So hopefully it doesn't get seized up on us. I'm actually going to coat all of this stuff in anti-seize. So hopefully it doesn't seize up on us. So I did the threads on the adjuster. I'm doing the outside of the adjuster. When you put this together, the little arm needs to poke in from behind, and the adjuster side pushes against the back of the arm. You can even see how it's notched, that it fits so nicely in there. It's not a coincidence, that's on purpose. And give that just a little dab as well. And we'll see, push this right up in here, give it a spin, and we'll see if we can get this. So it's home. There she goes. There we go. That's what I like. And then we have this little pin that sits into the front foot with a bunch of anti-seize as well. You could use grease too. I just like anti-seize. I'm going to put some anti-seize around the outside of there also. I don't want anything getting stuck. And this goes in from the other side here. Now all we need is our parking brake shoe. Where is that thing? There it is, in the box. It's a good place for it. This thing I find, easiest way, slip it on a little cattywampus there, and then we can turn right down to where it goes. And go grab my 2 new pieces of hardware to retain that right where it is. There you go, so we've got 2 little retainers, 1 for each side. Those get a dab of anti-seize also. And these only fit one way, so it would be difficult to mess it up. Then we get it to the German torque spec Guten type. Click. Click. There we go. Parking brake assembly installed. All right, so I can see the end of my axle shaft poked in there. I got my C-clip. Gonna wipe all the schmutz off of my C-clip. And supposedly it doesn't really matter which way you put these things in there, left ways, right ways, etc. But I try to put them back in the same way they came out. I'm sure you probably can't see what I'm doing, but I'm trying to get this little C-clip lined up into that groove on the end of my axle shaft. And this is close. All right, we're lined up. I give her a little tappy tap. She's going in. The reason I have to tap it like that is because these seals, the axle seal, you know, the rubber portion of it it's holding the axle from coming all the way in where I need it to be. So the tap, if you had 2 people, the other person could push and that would probably have the same effect, but the tap allows me to nudge that axle shaft in far enough to get the C-clip into place where it goes. So now our C-clip is in. See guys, I'm just stumbling along too. There we go. Now we need her to go all the way. Easy on the meat hammer, Jason. There she goes. Well, I think we might have gone a smidge too far. Center pin. There she goes. Okay. Everything in its home. Now we gotta screw this little screw in. Little retaining pin bolt. A 1/4 turn at a time. There she is. I'm gonna give her just a little smoochie. All right, she's good. We don't want to over torque that because we don't want to put any more stress than we absolutely have to on that little bolt, because we definitely don't want it to break off if we ever need to get back in here. So now we can put a rotor on over here on the driver's side. Now we've got brand new rotor, so our clearances should be tight. Oh, I almost forgot. I live in the Rust Belt, so I anti-seize the poo out of everything. And I like to put a little very thin coat of anti-seize around the inside of my hub here. Because if you live in the Rust Belt too, and you've had a rotor or a drum seize onto that flange, oh man, that'll really jack your day up. So we got that there, seated. And just to make things a teensy bit easier, I like to run a couple lug nuts on backwards to hold that rotor tight to the axle shaft. Just a little snug. There we go. Get one started. And get the other started. And get these tightened down. Now, get the other side here. There we go, inside. Got one bolt in. Another bolt in. There we go. Can you see my bleeder port is still the highest point on my caliper? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that where it's positioned. The bleeder port is the highest point. It's all that matters. Voila. There it is. Disc brake. Right here. Now, I will say, if I were going to do this on a four-wheel drive truck that I plan to take off-road, I would get pickup truck brackets to keep the calipers mounted higher, and those route the brake lines over the axle, up out of harm's way. The brake lines being under the axle here, if you're going to be driving this thing in situations where sticks and debris and other stuff was likely to fly up and catch that, could be a problem. But with what I'm planning to do with this truck, which is drive it on the street, I think I'm going to be okay. All right, everybody, it's the next evening, and to be honest with you, not a ton happened. I had a little bit of a change of heart. Nothing major, but here's what I did. I'm just going to show you what I did. So I got my parking brake cable routed for the driver's side. Honestly, really straightforward. It hooks on, you know, this is factory stuff. Hooks onto the little arm, comes back, down, wraps up and around, and goes back up. Once I have both cables, I'll connect them to the front section. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Nothing complicated there. And then I got to looking at my brake line, and I was like, you know, I think I can just reshape this brake line a little bit and use the factory line instead of making a whole new brake line for it. And sure enough, I had to cut the original coupler off the end and put the correct ferrule to match the threads in my brake hose, and then double flare it, which isn't a big deal. And then just a little bending, and I've got it here. I've even able to reuse the two factory brackets that keep it tight, keep it still. And I know it looks super close to my parking brake cable here, but I do in fact have light clearance all the way through. So parking brake cable is not rubbing against my hard brake line. You can see I used a bolt with a couple nuts to space these out a bit, keep everything happy-go-lucky and not rubbing against anything. So this side is done up. All right, everybody, it's the next evening, and the only thing exciting that happened today was the parking brake cable for the other side of the truck came. So I was able to get everything put back together. Routed my parking brake cable first, and then I was able to bend the factory hard line and reroute it down here to my brake hose. You can see I stuck the wheels back on. I refilled the rear diff with oil. I like to run 75-140 differential oil in these trucks. And this one with the Yukon Posi in it, I added a little bottle of the Yukon friction modifier for their Posi traction units. So got that all filled back up, dusted a little black paint on the places that were exposed, a little bracket, differential cover, my bolts, the little bracket over here, and what else? I think that's it. Got the parking brake cables connected. Guys, no other modifications needed. Just get the parking brake cables for the disc brake version of whatever truck you're working on, and that's good to go. I got the brakes bled. Honestly, quite simple to bleed. I left the bleeders open and just gravity bleed until I had brake fluid running out of the bleeders. And then once I did that, I used my little vacuum brake bleeder here, sucked out the last little bit of air that seemed to be trapped in the calipers, and she's ready to go, I think. All right, everybody, you're gonna have to find it in your hearts to forgive me. We're going on the test drive at night, which I would have preferred to do this during the day so you could actually see me, but we're just gonna have to settle for the dome light. Things didn't work out for me to be able to test drive it during the day. So I got it down off the lift. I pumped the brakes back up because obviously my brand new calipers were fully compressed. So, I mean, that's a simple process. You just pump the pedal a few times until it gets hard. So did that and checked the brake fluid in the reservoir, made sure the reservoir had enough fluid in it, and now we're on a test drive. I really don't know what to tell you other than this is mostly for me. I shouldn't hear any weird noises. I shouldn't feel like my braking performance is diminished. It should stop. Honestly, it should stop just like it did before. I really shouldn't feel or notice much difference. So far, that's how it is. Doesn't seem to be like dragging in the rear. Doesn't feel like the fronts are doing more work than they should be. Just feels like even braking. I don't hear any weird noises, no squeaks, no grinding. So I think we're solid here. I'm just gonna take it for a little loop around the block, and when we get back, I'll pull it back in the workshop. We'll make sure it looks like both calipers were applying. We should be able to tell just by rub marks on the brake rotors. Hopefully everything goes to plan. You know, I've seen lots of people do this conversion, and so many of them say, not this specific conversion, but converting the rear drum brakes to discs. And I see so many of them say, like, the brakes never felt right after that, or they have to put a proportioning valve in, or they swap out the master cylinder for a different master cylinder. A whole bunches of things that seem very complicated and difficult to figure out. This is the third truck I've converted from rear drums to rear discs, and all three trucks I retained the original master cylinder. I didn't feel any need to change it. The braking performance felt good. It felt even. It felt like factory brakes should feel. Parking brakes all work, like no issues. And the only thing I can think of that I've done on all three of my swaps that I don't know if other people did or not is I have used the dual piston Suburban Yukon XL Escalade EXT calipers on all the ones that I've converted. So maybe those dual piston calipers have similar enough fluid requirements to the drum brakes that it's just bolt in and go, and there's really not enough difference to cause any issues. And the other people that I've seen doing this that say that they have problems or have to figure out a bunch of stuff with master cylinder, maybe they're using the single piston rear calipers. The reason I suspect that is because all the pickups came with single piston rear calipers. So if you didn't know any difference and you would just assume, oh, I'll just get the rear disc brake stuff from a 99 to 02 pickup and I'll put it on my truck, maybe the single piston calipers have a different enough fluid requirement that is where they start to have those issues. I honestly don't know. If you know, or if you've done a rear disc brake conversion on one of these trucks and gone from drums to single piston rear calipers, how did it feel after you were done? Did you feel like the brakes were touchy, like you needed a smaller bore master cylinder or a proportioning valve of some kind? Like, how did it work for you? I'm curious. So let's get back, check out, make sure it looks like the brakes are working. It feels like they're working. I mean, honestly, the truck stops. I mean, it's stopping great. Very happy with the stopping. So we'll get back and check and make sure it looks like the rear brakes are applying. Wrap this video up so I can get it posted for you guys. Well, a little bit later, back at the workshop, and the furnace is running. I'm gonna see in editing, but I think the new mic that I got doesn't pick up enough of that I can keep recording, hopefully. But we're back at the workshop, and from what I can see on the rotors, it definitely looks like the rear brakes are applying. And I did do like an emergency stop a couple times, and I feel like it stops a little bit better than it did before. It could 100% be placebo effect because I know I just did this upgrade. It could actually be stopping in a shorter distance with better rear braking. I don't know, but I'm happy with it. I've had these parts hanging around for so long. It feels good to finally have them on the truck and off the shelf. And I've seen so much confusion about how people do this. Now you know. So thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this helps you. And until the next video, take care.